All right, ready to dive deep. Today, it's all about addiction and stress.
Oh yeah, those two, they really go hand in hand, don't they?
They really do. And
Yeah.
we've got a whole stack of like psychology textbooks and workbooks, even quizzes, all about how they're connected and how we can, break free.
That's the key, isn't it?
It is. It's like finding that escape route from this tangled web.
Mm-hmm.
So think of this deep dive as your like cheat sheet
Mm.
to understanding the science behind it all.
Right, because knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, and then we can start, building those strategies for actual lasting change.
Real transformation.
Yeah, exactly. So where should we start? I guess with addiction itself.
Yeah, let's define it first. Our sources talk about it as having these like two sides to it, the psychological and the physiological.
Okay, so it's not just about like the substance itself or the behavior. It's about what's happening in your brain too.
Exactly. And it's not just about, the typical things you think of like drugs or alcohol.
Right, right.
It can be gambling, gaming, even shopping. It's pretty broad, actually.
That's kind of scary how many things can kind of fall under that umbrella.
It is. One of the stories that really stuck with me from the material was about a woman named Lynn. She was struggling with a smoking addiction, but what was interesting was that she was really after that buzz.
Okay, so it wasn't just the act of smoking, it was the feeling she got from it.
Yeah, that hit of dopamine.
The dopamine rush.
Exactly.
So is that where like nicotine replacement therapy comes in?
It can, yeah. Things like patches, gum, inhalers, they can deliver nicotine in a cleaner way. The idea is to like gradually wean someone off.
So you're kind of meeting that craving in a safer way.
Right.
But is that really enough? Especially if like Lynn, you're chasing a feeling.
Well, you have to remember how nicotine works. It hits the specific part of your brain, the ventral tegmental area.
Oh, what?
The VTA, it's kind of deep in there, and that triggers a flood of dopamine. And well, dopamine is the pleasure chemical, right? It's what makes us feel good.
So it's like a reward system.
Exactly. So Lynn keeps smoking because her brain is getting that reward, and NRT can kind of step in and provide that same reward, but without all that harmful stuff that comes with cigarettes.
So I'm curious, is there a specific type of NRT that might be like more effective for someone like Lynn who's really after that dopamine hit?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it really highlights how important it is to individualize treatment. For someone like Lynn who is very aware of that buzz, something fast acting like gum or an inhaler might be more effective initially.
Because it's more like the cigarette, that immediate hit.
Exactly. But there's a lot of misunderstanding about NRT.
Yeah, I've heard people say it's just like trading one addiction for another.
Right. But it's not really that simple. You see, it's providing nicotine, yes, but it's in a very controlled way, and it's less harmful. You're not getting all those other chemicals you get in cigarettes.
Thousands of them.
Yeah, it's crazy. And importantly, it's a stepping stone. The goal is to eventually be nicotine free.
So it's like a bridge to get you there.
Exactly. But you're right. It's not just about replacing the addiction. It's about managing it while you're working on those other aspects, the psychological and the behavioral.
Right. It's like you're using a crutch while you're healing a broken leg. Eventually, you won't need the crutch anymore.
That's a great analogy. And that's where therapy and support systems come in. NRT alone might not be enough. You really need to look at the whole picture. What are Lynn's triggers? What are her coping mechanisms? What kind of support does she have?
Right. Because addiction it's like this multi-headed monster, right?
Yeah.
You got to tackle it from all angles. Speaking of tackling things, our sources also talk about alcohol withdrawal, and it can be way more dangerous than people realize.
Oh, absolutely. It can be really severe. In fact, delirium tremens or DTs can be fatal.
Okay, so DTs, those are the really bad ones, right? The ones where you see people like hallucinating and shaking uncontrollably.
Yeah, those are the ones.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's a very serious condition. You need medical supervision for that. But even the less severe symptoms can be incredibly uncomfortable.
Like what?
Anxiety, insomnia, nausea, tremors. I mean, your body basically goes haywire.
That sounds awful. So what can be done to make detox safer, to manage those symptoms?
Well, there are medications that can help. One class of drugs often used is benzodiazepines.
Benzo what?
Benzodiazepines. They enhance the effects of GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that calms the brain down.
So it's like a chill pill for your brain?
Pretty much, yeah. They can help reduce anxiety, tremors, even the risk of seizures.
Okay, that makes sense. But are those a long-term solution or just for like the initial detox phase?
They're typically used short term just to manage those acute symptoms.
Right, because long-term you could become dependent on those too, right?
Yeah, you don't want to trade one dependence for another. That's why they're carefully monitored.
Okay, so benzodiazepines, those are one option. Are there other medications used for alcohol detox?
Yeah, there's also naltrexone.
Naltrexone.
Yeah, it's an opioid antagonist.
Okay, now that sounds complicated. Opioid antagonist? What does that even mean?
Okay, so think about it this way. When you drink alcohol, it releases endorphins in your brain.
Endorphins, those are the feel-good chemicals.
Right, and they're actually natural opioids. So naltrexone blocks the opioid receptors in the brain.
Wait, so what do opioid receptors have to do with alcohol?
Well, those endorphins, they're part of what makes you feel good when you drink. So by blocking those receptors, naltrexone kind of takes the edge off that pleasure.
Oh, so you're not like totally numb to the effects of alcohol. It just doesn't feel as good.
Exactly, and that can help reduce cravings and make it easier to abstain from alcohol.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah. And then there's another one, disulfiram.
Disulfiram. Okay. That one sounds familiar. How does that one work?
That one works through what's called counter conditioning. Basically, it makes you feel really sick if you drink alcohol.
Oh, so it's like a built-in punishment system?
Kind of, yeah. Not exactly fun, but it can be really effective, especially in early recovery.
Like that extra layer of accountability.
Exactly.
So we've got these three different approaches to alcohol detox. Is one considered better than the others? Or does it just totally depend on the person?
It really depends on the individual, the severity of the withdrawal, their medical history, their preferences, even their support system. It all plays a role.
Right. It's like choosing the right tool for the job,
Yeah.
you know? You wouldn't use a hammer to screw in a light bulb.
Exactly. And that's a great segue into our next topic, stress management. I mean, we've talked about how stress can contribute to addiction, but it also needs to be addressed on its own, right?
Totally. So before we dive into that, I got to ask, what about those herbal remedies for stress? Valerian, chamomile, lavender. Do you buy into any of that?
Well, I try to keep an open mind. Some people swear by them. I think it's important to look at the science. What do our sources say about those specific ones?
Well, I'm definitely a fan of chamomile tea, like before a big presentation or something. It does seem to take the edge off. But I'm curious about the others. What's valerian all about?
Well, it's sometimes called nature's tranquilizer. It's thought to impact the same GABA system we were talking about earlier.
Wait, so it's like a natural version of those anxiety meds.
Kind of, yeah. It might increase GABA levels in the brain, but the research is still a bit mixed.
Okay, okay. So more research needed. What about chamomile? Is there actual science behind that, or is it just a placebo effect?
It's actually pretty interesting. Chamomile has this compound in it called apigenin, and it binds to benzodiazepine receptors in the brain.
So it's not just in your head, it's actually doing something.
Yeah, there's a chemical interaction happening.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And lavender, what about that one? I know it's used in aromatherapy, but is it more than just a nice smell?
Lavender has this compound called lanolin, and studies have shown that when you inhale it, it can have calming effects.
So it's like it goes straight from your nose to your brain.
Yeah, it might be influencing the activity of certain neurotransmitters, including GABA.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But I got to ask, are there any risks with these herbal remedies? I mean, they seem harmless, but
Well, that's the thing. They may seem harmless, but they're not regulated the same way pharmaceuticals are.
so like the quality could be different depending on the brand.
Exactly. And they can still interact with other medications or have side effects. It's always a good idea to talk to your doctor before starting any new herbal remedies, especially if you're taking other medications or have underlying health conditions.
Right, right. It's like just because it's natural doesn't mean it's a free pass.
Totally. And this brings us to another really interesting question that our sources bring up. Why do people sometimes not follow medical advice even when they know it's good for them?
Yeah. It's like we know what we should be doing, but then we don't.
Right.
our sources actually talk about this guy, Farouk, who has type 2 diabetes, but he struggles to, like, stick to his diet and take his medication.
And his story shows just how complex this issue can be,
Right.
because it's rarely just about, not caring or being lazy.
Right, right. There's usually something else going on.
Exactly. And our sources, they highlight four main reasons for non-adherence: stress, something called rational non-adherence, learned helplessness, and lack of support.
Okay, so stress, I get that. Stress can definitely throw a wrench in our best intentions. But what about the others?
Well, let's break them down one by one. So stress. One way it sabotages us is by creating this tunnel vision. When we're stressed, our attention narrows and we tend to focus on immediate threats, and everything else kind of gets put on hold.
So it's like our brains are in survival mode.
Exactly. And our sources even mentioned this study by Kessels in 2003 that found, a huge percentage of medical advice is immediately forgotten.
Wow.
And then only about half of what IS remembered is even accurate.
So it's like a double whammy. You forget, and then what you do remember might be wrong.
Exactly. And then there's the way stress impacts our memory. Chronic stress floods our brains with cortisol, and cortisol can actually impair memory function.
So it's not just about forgetting. It's like our brains aren't working as well.
Right. But forgetting isn't the only reason. There's also rational non-adherence.
Okay, what's that all about?
Ah.
That sounds kind of weird.
It's basically about consciously choosing not to follow medical advice after weighing the perceived costs and benefits.
So it's like a calculated decision.
Right. And this can be influenced by, a lot of things. For example, someone might have had a bad experience with a medication in the past.
Or they might be worried about side effects.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the financial burden. Medications can be incredibly expensive. And if someone's struggling financially, they might have to prioritize other things.
Like just putting food on the table.
Right. And then there's the patient-doctor relationship. If someone doesn't feel heard or respected by their doctor, they might be less likely to follow their recommendations.
It makes sense. Trust is huge.
It is. So all these things play into rational non-adherence. It's about risks versus benefits. And sometimes, even though we know something is good for us, other factors kind of tip the scales.
So it's not always as simple as it seems.
Right. And then we have learned helplessness.
Okay, that one sounds a bit depressing.
It can be. It's this feeling of, no matter what I do, nothing changes. So why bother?
Oh, I know that feeling. It's like you just give up.
Exactly. And imagine, someone like Farouk who's tried different diets, different medications, but his blood sugar is still high. He might start to feel like nothing he does makes a difference.
And that can be so demoralizing.
It is, and it can actually become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You start to believe that nothing you do matters, so you stop trying.
Exactly.
But there are ways to break out of that, right? Like therapy can help.
Yes, absolutely. It's about shifting that mindset, from I can't to I can.
Even if it's just baby steps, right?
Exactly. And that brings us to our final factor, lack of support.
Oh, that's a big one, isn't it?
It is. It can be a huge barrier.
Because if you feel like you're fighting this battle alone, it's easy to just give up.
Right. But support can look like a lot of different things.
Like what?
Practical support, like someone helping with meal prep or reminding you to take your meds, or emotional support, having someone to talk to who understands what you're going through, and informational support, like having access to resources and guidance from healthcare professionals.
So it's about having like a team in your corner.
Exactly. People who believe in you and want to see you succeed.
This has been quite a deep dive already, and
Yeah.
we've only just scratched the surface. We've talked about the complexities of addiction, the dangers of detox, all the hidden reasons why we sometimes sabotage our own health.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But there's good news, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. There's hope.
There's hope. And in the next part, we're going to shift our focus to solutions. We're going to explore practical strategies to boost adherence, manage stress effectively, and make lasting positive changes. So stay tuned.
Don't go anywhere.
Okay, so we've definitely explored some tough stuff. The struggles with addiction, the risks of detox, all that stress that just seems to like get in the way of our best intentions, right?
Yeah, but the good news is there's a flip side to all that.
A solution sign.
Exactly. And our sources actually offer some really, really practical answers.
Okay, that's what I'd like to hear. Actionable stuff.
They highlight these four key methods for boosting adherence: health education, reducing perceived threats, lifestyle changes, and supporting behavioral change.
Okay, so break that down for me. What does that actually look like in real life?
Well, let's start with health education.
Okay, that seems pretty straightforward, right? You just give people the information they need?
It's a little more nuanced than that.
I know.
It's not just about, handing out pamphlets or lecturing at people. It's about making that information relevant and accessible and engaging too.
So it's got to be tailored to the individual.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine trying to explain some complex medical concept to someone who's anxious or stressed, or maybe they have low literacy skills. It's not going to stick.
You got to meet people where they are.
Exactly. So for someone with low literacy, maybe you use more visuals, or you simplify the language.
Right.
For someone who's anxious, you might break the information down into smaller chunks and offer a lot of reassurance along the way.
It's like finding the right key to unlock understanding,
That's a great way to put it.
And sometimes it's not just about like what you say, but how you say it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tone of voice, body language, even the setting can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I've definitely been in those doctor's offices where you feel like rushed and intimidated, and you walk out and you're like, okay, I'm sure that was great advice, but I don't remember any of it.
Right. It's like information overload.
And don't forget about follow-up too.
Oh, yeah. That's crucial.
Like even a quick phone call a few days later can really make a difference.
It can. It shows that you care. Okay, so we've got the information part down. What's next?
What's next on our list of adherence boosters?
Reducing perceived threats. This goes back to that idea of rational non-adherence we were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes people resist treatment because they're afraid.
Afraid of what?
Side effects, pain, the unknown. I mean, we're all hardwired to avoid danger, right?
It's
So if someone sees the treatment as a bigger threat than the disease itself, they're gonna resist.
So how do you change that perception?
Well, you acknowledge it, you validate their fears, you listen to their concerns, you don't dismiss them.
Right.
And then you provide clear, honest information about the risks and benefits. You emphasize the potential positive outcome.
Need to build that trust, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a partnership, not a dictatorship.
And sometimes it's about reframing their perspective.
Oh, that's a good point. If someone doesn't really see their illness as a serious threat, they might not be that motivated to stick with the treatment.
Right.
So you might need to gently highlight the potential consequences of not taking action, but you want to do it in a way that motivates them, not scares them.
It's a delicate balance.
It is. Okay, are you ready to tackle the next one?
Hit me with it. What's next?
Lifestyle changes.
Ugh, that sounds so overwhelming. I mean, where do you even begin?
The good news is it doesn't have to be this huge overhaul.
Okay.
Small changes, consistently applied over time, they can have this ripple effect.
Okay, give me an example.
Imagine someone struggling with stress and insomnia, low energy. They're trying to quit smoking, but the cravings are just intense.
Okay, yeah, that's relatable.
So what if they just started by going for a 20-minute walk every day?
Just a walk.
It might sound small, but think about the ripple effects.
Yeah.
That walk could improve their sleep, reduce stress, boost their mood. It might even make those cravings a little easier to handle.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
Plus, it gives them this sense of accomplishment, like, hey, I did something good for myself today.
There's like a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. And it's not just about physical health either.
Right.
Lifestyle changes can impact our mental and emotional well-being too.
Yeah.
Things like mindfulness, meditation, spending time in nature, all of those can help us manage stress better.
It's like giving your brain a spa day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've got the information, we've addressed those fears, we're making those lifestyle changes. What's the final piece?
Wait on me.
Supporting behavioral change.
Yeah.
This is where we put it all together and create a system that makes those changes stick.
Okay, so what are some concrete strategies?
Well, our sources mention a few. Incentives, persuasive reminders, and social prescribing.
Incentives. So like rewarding yourself for healthy choices.
Yeah, it could be something as simple as, giving yourself a pat on the back, or it could be something more tangible.
Like a little treat.
Right, exactly. A new book, a movie night, whatever motivates you.
I like that. What about those persuasive reminders? You mean like setting alarms on your phone or
It could be that simple, or it could be more high tech. There are apps that track your progress and send you motivational messages, even connect you with online support groups.
like having a virtual cheerleader in your pocket?
Exactly. And then there's social prescribing. This is a really, really interesting approach. It recognizes that health isn't just about, pills and procedures. It's about our social connections, our sense of purpose, our engagement with the community.
So you're treating the whole person.
Exactly. So social prescribing might involve, connecting someone with a local walking group or a volunteer opportunity,
Oh, I like that.
an art class, a
Yeah.
gardening club, anything that gets them out and about and connecting with others.
Yeah, it's acknowledging that our mental and emotional health are just as important as our physical health.
Exactly. And sometimes those social interventions can be even more powerful than traditional medical treatments.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Okay, so we've covered a lot here. Education, threat reduction, lifestyle changes, and behavioral support.
Yeah.
It's a lot to digest.
It is, but it's all about empowering ourselves to make those positive changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember, change it's not always easy.
No, it's not. There are going to be setbacks. There are going to be moments of doubt. There are going to be times when you want to give up.
Right.
And that's where self-compassion comes in.
So if you slip up, don't beat yourself up about it.
Exactly. Just
Wow.
just acknowledge it, learn from it, and get back on track.
Right. And you don't have to do this alone. Reach out for support, talk to people, celebrate those
It
successes.
makes a difference.
It really does. Okay, so we've explored all these different methods for boosting adherence, reducing stress, making those positive changes.
Mm.
But we're not done yet. In
Yeah.
our final part, we're gonna distill it all down into some bite-sized actionable steps, things that you can start doing like right now. So stay tuned.
Yeah, don't go anywhere.
Okay, so we've covered so much in this deep dive. Like I feel like my brain is doing a little information overload dance right now.
Yeah, it's a lot to process for sure.
It is. But that's kind of the beauty of these deep dives,
I
right?
think so.
We get to like sift through all this research, pull out the really important stuff, and then help you actually apply it to your life.
Exactly. Make it actionable.
Actionable, yes. So for this final part, let's try to distill it all down to a few key takeaways. First up, I guess just remembering that addiction, it's a complex thing.
It really
It's
is.
got those two sides, the psychological and the physiological. Whether it's, smoking or alcohol or gambling or gaming, it's important to understand how those two sides kind of work together.
And remember Lynn,
Then, yeah.
she wasn't just addicted to the nicotine itself. She was hooked on that dopamine rush, that buzz.
Right.
So finding the right kind of NRT, one that mimicked that rapid release, could be really important for her.
It's like you're speaking your brain's language.
Exactly. Give it what it wants, but in a safer way.
Exactly. And then while the NRT is working on the physical side, you can start, tackling those other aspects, the psychological and behavioral stuff.
Therapy, support groups, identifying those triggers and finding those healthier coping mechanisms.
Right. It's like a multi-pronged attack.
It is.
And there's no shame in asking for help. I mean, there are treatments out there that can really, really work.
Evidence-based treatment.
Exactly. So speaking of finding what works for you, let's shift gears to stress management. Remember, we talked about a whole bunch of different things, herbal remedies like valerian and chamomile, lifestyle changes like exercise and mindfulness, social support systems.
Yeah, there's a whole toolbox of options.
There is. And I guess the main takeaway there is that there's no magic bullet.
Not really.
You got to experiment. You got to try different things and just see what works for you.
Listen to your body.
Listen to your body, exactly. And again, just like with addiction, there's no shame in reaching out for help if you're feeling overwhelmed. Therapists, counselors, support groups, they can all provide those tools and that guidance to navigate those rough waters.
For sure. And let's circle back to, I think, one of the most fascinating questions from this deep dive.
Yeah.
Why don't we follow medical advice sometimes, even when we know what's good for us?
Right. Remember Farouk?
Farouk, yep.
He knew he needed to manage his diabetes, but something was getting in the way.
And we talked about all those sneaky culprits:
Mhm.
stress, fear of side effects, lack of support, that feeling of helplessness, like nothing you do matters.
Right. And each of those needs a different approach.
Hmm.
For stress, it might be about finding those healthy coping mechanisms, learning to be more resilient.
Hmm.
For fear, it might be about, having those honest conversations with your doctor, asking questions, getting reassurance.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
for that feeling of helplessness, remember the power of those small wins.
Yes.
Start with one tiny change, a 10-minute walk, a few deep breaths, swapping out a sugary snack for something healthier. Those little things, they can really start to shift your mindset.
Absolutely. And don't forget about connecting with people. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, join a support group. There are even online communities now where you can connect with people who get it, who are going through similar things.
It's so important to know you're not alone.
It is.
So I guess as we wrap up this deep dive into addiction, stress, and all those tricky steps to positive change, we want to leave you with this question. What what one small change could you experiment with in your life, like starting today?
Maybe it's trying one of those herbal remedies we talked about,
Hmm.
or incorporating 5 minutes of mindfulness into your morning,
Yeah.
or even just calling a friend and saying, "Hey, I'm struggling. Can we talk?"
Yeah, whatever it is, just remember that even those small steps, when you take them consistently, they can lead to really big changes. Thanks for diving deep with us.
You got it. And remember, this journey to well-being, it's ongoing. There are going to be ups and downs, but you have the power to make those choices that support your health and your happiness.